But I want to right now talk a little bit on the human aspect of what may or may not be happening right now in the Middle East. And I'm talking about the fact that the Biden administration says the first phase of this deal would include the release of two Americans, Sagi Dekel Chen and Keith Siegel. Sagi Dekel Chen was taken from a kibbutz near the Gaza border while trying to protect his family on the 7th of October. He has 3 children, one of whom was born after he was captured. And with us now from Israel, Sagi's father, Jonathan Dekel Chen. Jonathan, I thank you for being with us this morning. I'm just wondering how you and your family are doing. And as we wait these eternal minutes to find out what is going to be happening there, how are you and your family doing?
Well, we simply keep doing the work on behalf of Sagi, but another 28 hostages from our kibbutz that still are in captivity in all of the 98. That includes appealing to the outgoing administration, the Biden administration, the incoming Trump administration, to keep pressure on all of the parties and not allow Hamas or Israel, for that matter, the Israeli government, to sort of slip through the cracks here and really hammer it home, make this happen for the good of the hostages, the good of Israel, but also for the good of 2 million Palestinians in Gaza who need this madness to stop.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just wondering, I know that you've been told that your son could be among the first hostages released as part of this agreement. What have you been told about your son and his condition?
Well, before that, I think just a clarification. I've certainly heard press reports about the sequencing, but our family has not received any official confirmation from the U.S. administration or from the Israeli government about any of this. So I really can't say very much in those terms. Honestly, like the rest of the hostages, we really don't know what Sagi's condition is. And your viewers may or may not understand that Hamas has never allowed the Red Cross, the Red Crescent, or any other international organization to visit with any of the hostages. So the last positive proof of life we had was from over a year ago. And at that time, we knew from hostages who had been released, women and children who were released in the first successful negotiation, a number of them had seen Sagi in the tunnels under Gaza just before they were released. They were able to tell us that he was alive and wounded. But at that time, they also told us about other men from our kibbutz that they had been with in the tunnels for months. And we now know that many of those men were subsequently murdered by Hamas. So at this moment, we really don't know the fate of pretty much any of the hostages.
You know, it's been 468 days since the October 7th massacre. More than 1,200 Israelis, men, women, children, killed, massacred, more than 250 people taken hostage, including your son. How do you go forward day by day? What keeps you and your family going? Where's the light? Where do you find the light?
I'm not sure there is very much light right now. The light will return when the hostages come home. But what keeps me going is an image that I've had in my mind since October 8th, which is Sagi entering some room or a hallway somewhere. I hope and pray on his own 2 feet. And his 3 little girls now, one of whom he's never met, run and leap into his arms. And he's then able to embrace his beautiful wife. And we will not stop until that vision comes true for us, for other hostage families, and also for those many, many hostage families whose loved ones have been murdered already, but to bring them home for a burial amongst their loved ones.
You know, I guess there are some who may have forgotten what happened on the 7th of October, others who conveniently play as if they've forgotten about it, the death, the pain, the suffering, and certainly the pain and death and suffering that has happened since that massacre. What do you want all of us to know?
Well, look, it clearly the series of events, the tragic series of events since October 7th was set off by an unprecedented, savage attack by Hamas and Islamic Jihad on Israel, on our civilian communities. In my community alone, of a little over 400 people, 59 were murdered that day, 79 were taken hostage, multiple rapes and complete destruction of our civilian community. Now, that's enough to sort of occupy one's mind for quite some time. But I think the challenge for all of us, and I say this to Israeli audiences as well, is not to descend into that endless cycle of hatred which got us here. Without right now affixing blame, for how we got here over these 100 years of conflict between Arabs and Jews in the Holy Land, that would be victory for Hamas. If what has happened over the last year and 3 months just institutionalizes the hatred. So I hope and pray for my grandchildren and the grandchildren of my neighbors across the border, even those who came to murder and loot our home, that they somehow can grow into a better future. But believe it or not, that's all predicated in getting our hostages home, which will allow then for the ceasefire to come into effect and somehow begin rebuilding all of our lives in the region.
Jonathan, you were saying that, it's very difficult to find any light as of right now. Do you find any hope? Do you have any hope? What does hope look like for you?
Right now, I have very, very limited needs, very limited goals. It's to get Sagi home, to get another 28 members of my extended kibbutz family home, and to reunite people in Israel of the 98 still remaining hostages. Beyond that, I pray that by virtue of having completed this agreement on the Israeli side, that we can somehow begin to heal our society, which came into this war just before the massacre, very, very divided. And the only way, even now, a year and 3 months after this war began, the only way it can even begin to start coming back together as a coherent society with any measure of solidarity, and the hostages have to come home. And that has to precede and just be prioritized by our government, but we also need the help of our friends in the States. For now, both the Biden and Trump administrations working hand in hand, but as of Monday, the Trump administration to continue to pressure as much as necessary both sides in this conflict, including the intermediaries. We have faith. We've seen the energy emanating from the Trump team that has brought us to this brink of peace and hostage return, but we need them to bring it home as well.
Jonathan, let's continue our conversation. I hope that we have a conversation where we have some great news to share and maybe some celebrations to carry out within the framework of what is so much death and suffering. And, just talking about your 400 extended family in the kibbutz, 59 murdered that day. But hopefully, let's continue and let's find hope and let's find light going forward. I hope we can continue our conversation going forward, and the next couple of days, our conversation will have some good news.